Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. My very special partner and guest, Sarah Snyder, is here again on this podcast. Guys, I love when Sarah comes on. She's been a part of my life for 3 years now. Almost, is it exactly three
It's
years, Sarah?
no, it's over 3 years. I just had my 30-year anniversary with the Carolyn Group.
Oh
hmm
man. Well, it's just been such an amazing and awesome ride. So I always love when Sarah joins me. And we're going to talk today about the ideal roadmap for new MSLs. Now, the reason we're doing this is because we've got so much demand for from newer MSLs that are struggling, that are looking to kind of figure out their way through the first year to 2 years, that we thought that this would be an important topic. Now, coincidentally, there's an episode that I did with Sam Buckley
hmm
called The Checklist for New MSLs. It was the most downloaded episode in all of 2024. Here's the crazy thing. Sam and I, that episode came out, or we recorded it exactly 1 year to the day today.
Crazy.
So this is like
Morning.
it's meant to be. We're supposed to cover this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
before we get into it, this episode is sponsored by MSL Mastery. So Sarah, do you want to tell everyone what MSL Mastery is and some of the awesome stuff going on?
Yeah, definitely. So MSL Mastery is Tom, me, and Patrina Pellet teamed up together to really solve problems in the industry. I don't have any better way to describe it. When I was thinking you were going to ask me if we're sponsoring it, what are we going to say about it? We're creating what we see as gaps and needs out there. And one of the big gaps was in communities. So we have a community for new MSLs. We also have a community for rising leaders. So I'm really excited about that. And we're doing team training now. There were a lot of gaps in that. One of our most popular ones is AI for medical affairs. So that one's great. But we also have some more basic access and insights and that type of training. So a lot going on, including obviously the Aspire MSL program, which most
Yeah.
people are familiar with.
Yeah, which is helping so many people. So if you guys are looking for more information on that, go to mslmastery.com. And interestingly enough, so this episode that we call the ideal roadmap is based upon an article that Patrina wrote and published, and and some of the information that was put together for some of the newer MSLs that we've been working with. So what I'm going to do, this is
Mhm.
kind of different from what I normally do.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to share my screen. Now, for those of
Okay.
you that are driving or in the gym or you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, you're not going to see this, obviously. So we're going to walk you through what this looks like.
Yeah.
But for those of you who want to see it, two things. You can either go to YouTube and watch it on video,
Mhm.
or Sarah,
Yeah.
they could download this, right?
Yeah. Actually, if you go to mslmastery.com and then click at the top blog and scroll down, look for this particular article. And the cool thing is, when you get to the article, you'll be able to download a new MSL checklist, and it's brilliant. Patrina put it together, and it's not just pretty; it's actually very tactical and useful. I think if I was a hiring manager, I would want to download it right away and just go through it and see if I have any gaps with my people. And if you're a new MSL or an aspiring MSL that's thinking to yourself, what is it actually going to look like to be an MSL? Go download it. It's free.
Yeah. And you
Mhm.
just, like Sarah said, you go
Yep.
to our blog, go to MSL Mastery, go to
Right
the
here.
blog,
Yep.
and then it's called the roadmap every new MSL needs to succeed in year one. So I'm looking at it right now, and it starts with like when you look at the roadmap, it starts at months 1 to 3, building your foundation. But Sarah, let's go before that. I want to go before that. Let's just say there's folks that are aspiring MSLs or brand new MSLs. Let's talk about like, or I should say aspirings. What should people do to prepare themselves for their day one?
Mhm. I mean, the very first one, Tom, and a lot of people might think they have this because of COVID, but you've got to get a home office ready.
Mm.
That is going to be very efficient, very practical, where you can get things done. I know that the MSL role is going to be a travel role, but working from your couch isn't really going to be sustainable. So get yourself a designated area, get organized, start to feel like you're an MSL. And then if I wanted to add one additional thing in here, it would be to, you might already be doing this, but I'm going to tell you to up level it a little bit and read in your specific therapeutic area. You can set yourself some Google alerts or PubMed alerts and also subscribe to some of the free pharma sites that collaborate all this information and send you those so you can see like a fierce pharma and see what's new in the industry and get in the habit of taking at least 10 minutes a day and scrolling through those and just picking up the high level trends in your particular therapeutic area.
Awesome. That's great
Mhm.
advice. So, all right, you get the job and you're day one and we're month 1 to 3. And on this roadmap, it says building your foundation. So, what does it take to build their foundation?
Yeah. Well, your laptop shows up at the door and then you turn it on, and all of a sudden you get these emails with typically two things. One is going to be a lot of scientific articles to read. And then two is going to be a lot of compliance modules to do. So as you're going through this, most companies are not going to tell you, hey, do this amount of thing per day, spend 2 hours doing this. They're not going to give you that kind of minutia. So you've got to figure out in that first month, 1 through 3, how are you going to time block so that the compliance modules don't get done the day before or the night before, that night before, like 11:59, don't do
Mm.
that. You got to space out this stuff. But that's what the building your foundation is. It's a lot of therapeutic training, a lot of company specific training. Every company is going to be a little bit different. Some of them are going to be very structured and give you uh, tests and different assessments along the way. I spoke with an MSL yesterday who has two assessments, one at the end of 6 weeks and then one at the end of 8 weeks. Sometimes they'll have you come on site during those first 3 months and do an assessment on site. Sometimes it'll be virtual. Whereas other companies are a little bit more laid back and what you might talk to your manager and then head out in the field. Sometimes there'll be some field rides. So building your foundation is exactly what it sounds like. You're getting that scientific foundation and then also familiarity with the company.
Is this when the certification happens in this?
It usually is. So that would be if they have any kind of assessment, it would be that 6 to 8 week or maybe the 12 week mark would is when that would happen. And sometimes that's a formal presentation. The one that I heard about the other day was more like a simulation. So lots of companies doing it different ways.
Can you talk about the importance
Yes.
of the certification and how to go about it and why you need to take it seriously? We just actually in the past like couple weeks, I've heard of a few people that didn't
Yeah.
make it through. I don't want to scare anyone,
Yeah.
but I've heard of a couple of people that didn't actually make it through the certification and lost their jobs. Can you talk about that piece?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that about that too, Tom. I think it's becoming more common. These are tough. They hire the best of the best people and then they expect you to rise up very, very quickly. And it can be a lot to take in. When you're getting these scientific articles, what happens is you don't always know what you should be reading. So you're reading it and you think you're retaining some of it. But when you have 14 articles to read in 2 days, you're not going to know all of the things. And then you look at the slides, and sometimes they'll give you 100 slides to look through and say you're going to be presenting on this information. And it's when you haven't worked in pharma before, it's just hard to understand what specifically that you need to know, what's nice to know, what it's okay to say. I'll look that up and get back to you. I personally remember being quite nervous about one of my own certifications. And I had to fly down. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in the Dallas airport, walked in. We did it in the hotel airport. They picked a business room at that hotel, whatever that is, Hilton maybe. And they just fired questions. So
Mm.
it makes you almost want to cry. You can't, don't cry. So
No
whatever
crying.
you do, don't cry. Stay cool about it, breathe, but it's one of those things you've got to be able to talk and learn on and show that you've learned the material and now you can share it in a way that it would be retained on the other end.
Got it. Awesome. Okay, so now we are at months 3 through 6, gaining momentum. So let's talk about that.
So if you hadn't already, at that point, you're going to have your KOL list. Or if you're at a smaller company, sometimes you're going to be developing it yourself. But let's assume that you're at mid to large or at a small company that has some type of list to give you. This is when you're doing the job. You're starting to look up your KOLs, you're reaching out to them, doing some introductory visits, getting to know your cross functional colleagues. You're gaining momentum. You're going down the road. You are an MSL now, and you're doing the things that it takes to do.
Mm, awesome.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
we're starting to get a lot of people coming to us to join our Rise program at this
Mhm.
kind of in that, middle stage where they're getting overwhelmed and they want to be successful. Can you tell everybody a little bit about what the Rise program is?
Yeah. Yeah. So our Rise community is truly a community. This is something I've wanted to do for years. I missed having a community other than the people that I was working with, which they're great. But as a new MSL, you might be the only new person, or there might be a couple new people on your team, but you don't have a place to ask all the questions or get the support. And what happens at this month 3 to 6 is you start to reach out to KOLs. Sometimes you don't hear back. And you're like,
Mm,
how am I supposed to do this job if I can't even get KOL access? And then what happens? You think, I'm not any good.
mm,
I wasn't good enough for this. I barely made it through the interview process. I'm just not a good MSL. And then you're like, I'm going to get fired. Like that's
mm,
what starts to happen to you. If KOLs can't respond to you, how am I going to do my job? So those are the kind of feelings that you start to naturally have. It's hard to maintain your confidence, especially in that the 1 to 3 mark is hard, but that 3 to 6 month is, I would say, is even harder. So
mm.
in the Rise community, we provide tools, resources, templates to really help you get over that difficult time.
Yeah, I love it too. It's such a great
Yeah.
group and I love working with
Yeah.
everyone. And yeah, so if you guys are interested, reach out. We'd love to invite you into that group. Then you get to month 6. I think so for those not looking at this right now, we're
Yeah.
at this point on this document, on this graphic, where we're talking about months 6 through 12. And this is where you would become a trusted partner. So let's talk about that.
I love how Katrina designed this because
Yeah.
after month 6, it goes, if you're not seeing this, guys, it goes a little bit downhill. And the reason it goes downhill is things get a little bit easier because you start to figure out, okay, I know where I go on my computer. I know that I can reach out to these KOLs. Oh, I'm going to this therapeutic conference and I feel like I kind of know what I'm doing. So you're coasting a little bit. But then she has it about halfway through, you're going back up a hill
Mhm.
again because the expectations keep going. Now you're almost at the year mark and you're expected to do more. You're expected to be more of a trusted partner to these KOLs that it feels like just yesterday you could barely get access to. So there's a lot of expectations there. There's one other thing I wanted to highlight here in that becoming a trusted partner section. When I look at this, I think KOLs, but it's also with your cross functional colleagues. So your account managers, your health outcomes counterpart, your boss. Like this is when you really start to show that this is the kind of person they came on board, they are doing what they said they could do. So your goal should be to be trusted at that point. You don't have to be this superstar. Most hiring managers will say, don't try to be a superstar in that first year. Just learn the job, but you can definitely become a trusted partner.
Awesome. And
Hmm.
what's nice about getting through, so now we're at that point where we're through the first 12 months,
Yep.
which that's a real milestone for a couple of reasons. So when you get past your first year in any job, especially the MSL position, you just you kind of feel like you've earned that badge of um, I'm still new, but I'm no longer new. Like you're not brand new, you're still kind of a newer MSL, but you're getting up there and you're entering into year two. You have momentum, you know the job, you have relationships now, and you're past training, you're certified, you're like doing all of those things that you set out to do. It's becoming starting to become more second nature to you. And now you're building your career. So we're going to talk about year two and beyond, which Patrina has drive impact and deliver results. So Sarah, talk about that piece.
Yeah, and stories are always the best way to describe this. So we actually on our Aspire MSL group coaching call, we had a previous member hop on and share with our Aspire community a little bit about what his first few months have looked like. So, Tom, I'm going to go back for just a second because
Yeah.
this is related to your question, but he was explaining how during months through 1 through 3,
Hmm.
one thing he did was as he's meeting people at the company, he was paying attention to what types of side projects they were working on.
Mm.
What
Yep.
committees were they a part of? And he was surprised. He's like, the one thing that's really shocked me is how many opportunities are out there. Obviously, first and foremost, my responsibility, especially in the first couple of years, is going to be KOL engagement. But he said, the opportunity to potentially join one of these committees once I prove myself that I can do my field work, that's really cool. And I'm just going to take this year to learn what are people
Mhm.
doing, where would my interests and my skill set best help out the company. So I think as you look at year two and beyond, those are the types of things that you can look at. You can look at the different committees that you could volunteer for. You can definitely be in close conversations with your manager about where your skill set might be a best fit. Don't wait for someone to come find you and say, what kind of projects that you do want to work on? Be proactive. This is your career and you're an entrepreneur as an MSL. So just like your KOL field development, your internal results within medical affairs and beyond are also up to you.
I love it. I love
Mm.
it. I think that, and Nick was awesome.
Yes.
Having him come back and share
Awesome.
was amazing. So so obviously people that are listening to this, you're probably in all different kind of areas or tenure in your career. So as we are getting through that first year, looking into that second year, Sarah, what advice do you have for people to go from from year one to two, and how they can really consider leveling up and improving and establishing themselves as an MSL?
Well, the biggest piece of advice is just don't get down on yourself.
Yeah.
I think the expectations on MSLs in 2025 are much higher than they were even a few years ago. And one of the things, Tom, I think that is important to point out during this podcast is that some of the middle management in pharma has been cut, which means that MSLs often might be reporting to someone that has 10, 12 direct reports. So you're not necessarily getting the support that you might have gotten a few years ago when it was more like each field manager has maybe 5 or 6 MSLs. So I think that's changed things a little bit. You're expected to do more with less leadership is the fundamental change. You've got to find someone that can serve as a mentor to you, whether in your company or outside of your company, where you can ask the questions because there's going to be silly questions. The one that always pops out in my mind that I like to share is I remember thinking, if I have a dinner program, can I go to the gym at lunch? Like, those are the things you're like, what can I do here? I'm like, if I traveled for 5 days, like, can I go to the dentist at 10 in the morning or do I have to ask someone? Like, these silly things things are the things that you got to find someone that you can trust, that you can ask, that's going to help you get through that year. I think that it's a lot of stress. And so making sure that you're taking care of yourself and giving yourself a break after travel. So be careful with your calendar to schedule in some time after long meetings, to schedule some breaks, that type of stuff. I think in order to succeed, you have to be healthy and you have to be energetic. So you got to take care of yourself first. And then I think we talked about it a little bit, Tom. The genius behind this, but that year two and beyond, the sky's the limit. I
Mm.
think that you've got to talk to as many people as you can within pharma to see what might be the best avenue for you to go to next.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. And I think that this is such when I have this conversation and I look at this roadmap and this graphic and follow, it's just it's so exciting. There's challenges and there's,
Yes.
ups and downs, but getting through that first year, it does another thing too. It kind of gets your resume to a place
Yeah.
where if I'm not saying you should, but if you did want to consider making a move, I wouldn't suggest making a move before a year if you can avoid
Yes.
doing that. If you can avoid it, just
Hmm.
because you want to have that 1 year under your belt, you want to be able to say, yeah, I spent a year here. I would say if you can spend a couple years and really get the foundation of what it means to be an MSL, work at a company, um, develop a territory, create relationships, understand the disease state, and then you're just setting yourself up. So that 1 to 3 years, being able to do that, it really helps you write your ticket. But Sarah, let's talk about as we're looking at that later phase and as people are going from um, an MSL to a senior MSL, and that I know
Hmm.
that that's a loaded subject because
Yeah.
not everybody calls senior MSLs
Mhm.
um, that title at the same amount of time in tenure. But I think for a lot of people, their goal is to go from an MSL to a senior MSL. Any advice on how they can do that?
Yeah. Let's start with what not to do because it's really simple. And that is wait until the end of the year to do your performance management, right? To fill in your goals, fill in your what you've done, etc., and then think that's going to be enough to get you promoted. Sometimes it is, but waiting until then is also recipe to possibly not get the promotion and to
Mhm.
not be aware of what you've actually accomplished. So sometimes some people do this on a weekly basis, some people do this on a monthly basis, but you've got to track your own stuff.
Mhm.
That's different from tracking actual metrics from KOLs, but what kind of projects have you done? What kind of feedback have you gotten from your cross-functional colleagues? And how are you saving that and keeping track of it so that you have somewhere to go back to when it does not come time for that review? Any kind of calls that you're doing, leadership, mentoring that you're doing, stretch assignments, how are you tracking that? And what does success look like in each of those things? You've got to keep track of that. So when it's time for promotions, you've got this full list, but you're not sharing at that point. You've been sharing that proactively with your leadership all along. You're going into your one-on-ones with a template, a plan, and sharing these kind of things. Here's what I did. Here's what went well. Hey, here's a question I have. How could I do this better? So you've got a structure every time you talk to your leadership. There's no surprises at the end of the year. If you end up being surprised that you didn't get a promotion, you got to look back and think, what could I have done differently so that I knew what it would take? If I didn't know what it took and I was surprised to stay an MSL or to stay a senior MSL and not move to principal, I got to look back and I got to think it's on me.
Mm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Good stuff. And it is. It is on you. And that's the thing. I think it's so important to be your own advocate and take control of your future. So all of what Sarah just said is just amazing advice. What about just thinking about that the success factor of, okay, how do I get from point A to point B in the most efficient manner? So is there any advice as it relates to maybe tools or resources that can help. I mean, obviously there's AI and there's
Yeah.
digital and there's all these things now and CRMs and all this other stuff. But can you kind of break that down briefly to say what MSLs should be putting in their toolbox in order to get their career from point A to point B?
Yeah. I mean, listening to this podcast, Tom, you have so many gems of previous episodes where those are the skills that I mean, so go back and re-listen to them because a lot of the information is right there. You can hear from the top leaders in the industry. So that would be number one. You mentioned AI. AI isn't going anywhere and it's not the future. It's already here. So if you're not starting to figure it out, you're going to be behind.
Mm,
So I would say you've got to adapt and figure out technology. I know that it's easy to say I'm just not good at technology, but that's not going to be an excuse that we can use anymore. We got to be able to figure it out. And you don't have to understand the ins and outs of it. I don't understand that part, but you got to figure out how to use it in your daily life to make you more efficient and effective. And then I think the last thing is up level your communication skills. And that could
mm,
be formal present, like any kind of formal presenting, or it could just be one-on-one working with your mentors. I know we already talked about Nick, but I'll talk about him one more time. He said that during some of his practice simulations, and this guy practices a lot,
mhm.
he just kept getting better and better and better. We even talked
Yeah,
about it after he got on the call, how comfortable he was, how articulate he was. He's getting that way because he's practiced so
yeah,
many times. So get better. Like that, I think we can all get better. Record yourself. Go talk
yeah.
to yourself and present the stuff and then watch yourself back. You can do all these little things that will slowly add up.
Good stuff. Awesome. Last thing, and I really feel that this is really super important, and I don't think a lot of people don't take the time
Mhm.
and are not consistent with this. But let's talk about branding and how important it
Oh,
is to consider social media,
yeah.
specifically LinkedIn, for your career as an MSL, but also how important it is to just be aware of the digital footprint that you're leaving and or not leaving that you're if you're absent. You've become, Sarah, you've become an influencer and a real leader in the medical affairs, social media, actually LinkedIn space. So guys, if any of you are listening to this and you're not following Sarah, you should absolutely be following Sarah Snyder and Patrina Pellet and myself, just because we're just providing free content every
Yeah.
day for
Yeah.
you.
Hmm.
And we love to do it. And Sarah's content's just amazing. Can you talk about the importance of personal branding as an MSL for your career?
What Tom is it's so funny because he still has, if you're listening and you can't see this, he still has the roadmap blog up, but he doesn't know this. But the blog that I just published yesterday was called Personal Branding for MSLs in 2025, why your digital presence is your new business card. So Tom, in that article, I essentially outlined this. And I know you didn't see
I
it,
did
but
not. I swear I
yeah,
did
no, I
not.
know. He really didn't, guys. He didn't. But I essentially talk about how when, let's say you're interviewing, okay? So some of you guys are aspiring MSLs and you're interviewing. One of the things people will do is Google you and they will look at your LinkedIn profile. So I give you steps in that post of how to audit yourself digitally because people are going to do it. It was funny because when I wrote it, I was thinking to myself, if you're going to a restaurant, what do? You Google it for reviews.
Mm.
If you're going to meet someone, like let's say if my son brings home a girl or whatever, from college, I'm going to Google her. Like we just do that, right? It's this natural thing to do. People are going to Google you. What shows up on your LinkedIn? Do you have public social media on Facebook that's showing and like, does it reflect the you that you want it to reflect? So there's a lot of steps in there, but I think Tom, you eloquently said you have a brand, whether you like it or not, it just might be non-existent. So you got to get a digital brand. This isn't going away. It's only going to increase. And KOLs, oh, one quick thing, Tom.
Yeah.
When Patrina and I were at this training on site for this MSL team, we were talking about researching the KOL before a visit. And she said, when she went on her LinkedIn, she could tell, you know how you can say who viewed you? The KOL viewed her. So
Wow.
that's the future. And so it's, LinkedIn isn't just to get you a job, it's now your professional presence.
I love it. And I'm going to leave it there. Guys, that's so important. And it
Mhm.
is actually, it's so funny. It's literally staring me in the face. Personal branding for medical science liaisons in 2025. It's like the first article that comes up. So,
You
um,
got to read it, Tom.
I have, yeah, and it's just crazy. It was just like perfect timing. But guys, I encourage you to download the checklist, check out this article in this blog, and definitely, like I said before, um, follow Sarah, follow Patrina, follow me on LinkedIn. We're definitely trying to produce the best most up to date, most helpful content to put out there for you guys. And I just want to say, I just appreciate every one of you guys for your support of this podcast and for sharing it. I can't like, it's literally like every day someone says, oh, so and so told me to listen to your podcast. And so I appreciate that. You guys are the best. Sarah, thank you for being
Thank
here
you.
and for
Yeah,
doing
thank
this
you.
as
This was
always.
fun. Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Awesome. Okay, guys, we'll see you next
Okay.
time.
Bye.